Hello and welcome to another episode of Tri Talk. Today with me as ever is my wonderful co-host Aneta Grabmiller-Soldati. My name is Oliver Tonder, and we have our first double episode planned for you guys today. Dominik Wychera and Bart Cooymans, two of our good close friends from the Xterra circuit. Welcome to the podcast, guys.
Thanks for having us.
So just to give our podcast listeners a bit of an overview of who these guys are and maybe of their athlete profiles, Dominik and Bart both probably had their best results coming this year around the Czech races. Bart got a impressive 15th and 16th place in the long course and the short track, while Dominik got a wonderful 9th. I think for both of these guys, these were probably the highlights of their seasons. Dominik, as opposed to Bart, probably his swim is probably his weakest discipline, while for Bart, it's the other way around, where his swim is probably his strongest. Again, if you guys disagree with any of this, please feel free to jump in.
I have to add a completely irrelevant story with Dominik, because Dominik is probably the athlete from Xterra that I know the longest. And I found out when I was preparing for this podcast that we actually raced even before I knew you together at 2012 European Cup in Vienna. We both raced there.
Oh, wow. I came last.
You were 67th and I did not finish, so...
My decision was quitting road triathlon at this point.
I do know you from 2016, though. There was a cross triathlon world championship in Australia where we both raced, and we actually both were on a podium. I won the U23 category. We were two athletes there, and Dominik was third. So better results. And I remember this conversation that we had together. Dominik asked me, so this is your last year in U23 and next year you're going to race in Elite. Are we going to see each other around? And at that point, for me, stepping up to the Elite class was so scary and I couldn't imagine it, that it took actually 4 years of triathlon break to race in the Elite for the first time in 2021. So 5 years break. So, but... yeah, I'm happy that we both are still racing and we are both still in Xterra and cross triathlon. What keeps you, or what brought you to Xterra, both of you, and what keeps you in triathlon?
Was doing a lot of basketball playing when I was younger, and I quit the sport when I was 16 years old, and I somehow managed to try triathlon, and I loved it, and I fell in love with Xterra racing off-road. And then I raced a couple of years in my age group, and I've been to Maui twice. I was on the podium in my age group in Maui at the World Championship. And since 2017, I think, 16, I turned into elite racing, and I've been doing this a couple of years now, and it's super exciting.
The 67th place in Vienna European Cup didn't motivate you to stay in Olympic distance triathlon?
Well, this was actually a sprint triathlon, I remember. And the swim was incredibly fast, and I was like chasing on the bike as hard as I can. I caught the group in front of me, ended up riding at the first position in this group, and then completely blew up on the run. So I thought for me a better sport would be off-road triathlon, where every discipline is kind of similar, like from the weight, how you can improve and like catch up on people and stuff.
Bart, you have been also racing on the road, haven't you?
Yeah, that's where I started out. Or actually, I grew up. I started out on the athletics track, believe it or not. I got bored with that because as a little kid, you need to do everything. And even back then, I knew what I like and also knew what I didn't like. So that after 3 years, I quit that, started swimming just 2 times a week, and did that for quite a long time. Had a hobby jumping around on BMX bikes during the summer, and started at some point swimming a bit more seriously. Got into running and cycling to get fitter, and that actually made the step quite small to actually try out a triathlon. And as soon as I did that during my first race, it was such an experience, and I knew like, oh, this is what I want to do more of. So ever since then, I started racing more and more. Quite quickly got noticed by a team, entered the Dutch competition through there, and at some point, after 2 years, ended up in a really good team. Also had the opportunity there to try out a cross triathlon for myself, and got that same experience, which I really liked all over again. And then after the pandemic, I started focusing more and more on off-road Xterra cross triathlon racing, and yeah, I've been doing that ever since.
And how did you guys meet?
That was actually earlier this year, because
Really?
yeah,
Only this
I
year.
mean,
only this
we
year.
have met before, I think, like saying hi, how you doing, but not like building a
Yeah.
friendship.
Exactly.
But now you're besties.
Yeah, there's quite a good friendship that resulted from this year. Got to know each other quite well, and yeah, it's
I decided to grow a mustache together.
Our weirdness level is very similar, and so it's
Yeah.
very easy to get along with.
Some people decide to get friendship bracelets, and we just decided to get a mustache.
Friendship mustache.
It's like blood brothers.
And how is the mustache coming along, Bart?
You can tell me.
I think it's wonderful. I shaved mine. I have Dominik doesn't
Yeah,
like
me too.
So now you can start yours together.
We should.
But you guys are both quite loyal to Xterra family. You've been racing for several years. Like, what makes you stay in Xterra, and has it changed in the last 2 years when the World Cup was introduced?
Yeah, I've invested so much money into this organization in the last 10 years, so I have to stay. It would be stupid to leave now. So I try to get as much back as possible from the World Cup.
And how is that going for you, Dominik?
Well, it's quite hard in my position, but I'm working on it.
Yeah, for me it was honestly when I started looking for cross triathlons abroad. I quickly landed on Xterra, and yeah, I loved it ever since. Like every race is completely different, but it's a really cool experience. And also coming from the Netherlands, where like riding a mountain bike is nothing compared to riding a mountain bike abroad. But yeah, I really like that, and over the past few years I've tried to improve myself over and over again, and that's how I started racing Xterra more and more, and yeah, became a regular on the starting line.
We talked about Xterra friendship, and we forgot to mention that you guys actually created a group called Oberwapplers. And we already had 2 other members of that group. And one of them, Scott, told us that you, Bart, actually want to move to Austria. Is it to become a better Xterra athlete?
Part of that, yes, definitely. Yeah. I had the opportunity to spend quite a bit of time there this summer. I think that's also the time where Dominik and I really, built our friendship up even more. And yeah, looking back on that period, it's definitely the highlight of my year. And yeah, also the country in general. I love it. The nature. It's one big playground for me, and it matches really well with what I think I need to improve further. So at some point, if I get the chance, I'll definitely go there and experience living there for a while. And I don't know for how long, but I do want to. Yeah.
Was your bond also created by the fact that you both are riding way too fast in training and no, sorry.
Where did you get this info?
So another athlete that has the opportunity to train with you this summer was complaining that she couldn't, now I gave a hint, that she couldn't keep up with you because you guys keep riding way too fast before races. And I have experienced that at Xterra Czech because I went to familiarize with you on the bike. So is that something that made you good friends?
I mean, this specific athlete that you were pointing out was only doing one ride with us, which was a road ride, starting with, what was it, 60-kilometer straight road, mostly downhill. And she was sitting in fourth position. So I don't know how this could be too fast for anyone in the whole circuit.
And I think we can reveal that athlete is Solon. And I think if there is anyone who can complain about other athletes riding too fast, it's me, because I trained with Solon the week before you did, and I have definitely struggled to keep up with her.
So I think you made her tired the week before, then she came to Austin, and yeah.
That is very much a possibility, yes.
But you're still more than welcome to tag along in a training if you want to, Aneta.
Yeah, anytime. But I mean, there are trainings happening where Bart and I ride up a mountain pass for like, I don't know, 2 hours, then ride back home. And on the last 10-kilometer stretch with like 500 meters of climbing, he decides to do his best ever FTP test up the road to finish off the ride to start the brick run with a 3:0 pace.
No, I learned my lesson, and I actually got dropped by Dominik's father in Malvano. We went on a ride together before the race, and knowing how this goes after Triathletes, I decided to let them. Or I decided voluntarily, of course, to let them go. so it seems like it runs in the family.
One important note, was it on the uphill or the downhill that you got dropped?
On the uphill.
Oh, then you should definitely try to ride it downhill.
They let me go in front for some reason.
For a little bit, and then he comes passing
Martin
by
sends
on the
it
inside of a turn. Yeah.
Well, you guys half-wheeling is actually somewhat of a reason why this podcast exists. Because the reason why me and Aneta started talking was when when Dominik, Bart, me, Aneta, and Scott went for a pre-ride of the Xterra Czech course. I wasn't particularly fit. Aneta was tapering, and you guys were just absolutely bombing it up the hill. I was just like, I'm sitting at 185 heart rate. I'm supposed to be having a nice time, and I'm dying. I think I'm going to pull off with Aneta here. And that was when we started talking about, I'd like to consider having a podcast. So you guys are actually, thank you. You guys are responsible.
That's true. I forgot about it. But we started to talk about something just before we started recording, and I told Bart to keep it for himself later for the podcast. We discussed it just before this episode. We talked about the 2025 World Cup schedule and the fact that there's not going to be a joker. Is that something you guys think is beneficial, or what do you think about it?
Well, okay. Well, I think it's not really beneficial because, I mean, this is a sport where a lot of things that are out of the athlete's control can happen, like a mechanical on the bike, you slip on a run, you pull something, you roll your ankle. I don't know, something can always happen in a sport like this. And having a non-joker rule almost makes you drop out of any potential top 10 final result in the end of the season when something like this happens to you, which is point one. And point two is whoever has the most travel budget to go to all those places has a bigger, has a better chance to end up in a higher ranking automatically.
What about you, Bart? How do you feel about the next season and how you think the whole thing's going to look?
Specifically the World Cup, I can definitely see both sides of the story, but I just think, in line with what Dominik has said, that the sport is not mature enough for there to be a big enough field, so you have people everywhere all the time. And also one critical difference with the type of racing Xterra is versus other triathlon competitions is obviously we're riding off-road. We have certain courses we go on, we race on, and we push ourselves, and that's not without risk. And to have rules set up that don't allow any leniency if you have a crash or an off day or something mechanical happens to you, and that could ruin your whole grand scheme in the competition. That's a bit of a severe penalty that an athlete has to pay for, literally out of their own pocket. And I think the rules could suit the way the sport is today better, and next year as well.
And are you looking forward specifically to any of the World Cup stops? Are any of you guys open to talking about your calendar for next year? Is that finalized?
Yeah, I do have a pretty good. I'll preface this by saying that I won't race the full World Cup. It's something that I had in mind originally for 2026. But by the way things were going in the last part of the season, it went well, and I think well enough to try and see if World Cup was already possible. But obviously, it's not only reaching the level, but also being able to travel across the pond a few times and being away and structuring a whole lot around it in order to make it possible. That's something I couldn't set up in a good way already for next year. So I decided to focus myself on the World Cup races that take place in the continent of Europe for next year. And I added in some other fun new races to that. And that's basically the outline of my calendar for next year.
And any favorites from the races you're going to go to?
I really like the Czech and German combination. Two completely different courses. If I can speak my preference for the one of those two, it would be Germany, because it suits me a bit better course-wise. And I also like the whole week around it, and the location where we race, and the whole atmosphere, because it's both of those races, the spectators and the atmosphere is awesome, and that's also a part that adds to the experience.
I fully agree with you. I love, my favorite Xterra memory so far has probably been twisting my ankle the day before I was supposed to race Xterra Zittau, Xterra Germany, and going and cycling up around the bike part, and standing on the steepest hill and yelling at you guys to go, 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 go. That was probably one of my favorite things. But what about you, Dominik? What are you looking forward to in the next season?
So for me, the World Cup itself is already a big goal for me. I already tried this year, but I had some private problems at the beginning of the year, and then it was kind of a roller coaster for me. But really excited for next year, and I'll be starting into the season in Australia. So that will be my first big test for the system. So obviously this is the first race, and it has never been there before. And I also have never been to the UK, and I haven't raced in the US. So I can't really choose which one would be my race of preference for next season. But we'll be very excited, and very a good schedule all over the year.
I heard you also talking with Scott about potential strategies going into next year, trying to prioritize earlier races to potentially get qualified for the short tracks. Is that something you're going to try to do?
Yeah, definitely. That's why we also decided to go to Australia to start the season strong and get good points at the beginning, and get into get it rolling into a good point system where you can maybe benefit for the next couple of races. So it will be a tight schedule, but it will be for me, it will be a season cut into two sections. The one where it's racing from end of March all the way into mid of May, and then focusing towards August again, where we'll be racing in Czech Republic and Germany, and then towards Zittau. So I think there's a good couple of weeks in between where we can take it a bit slower and then build up and maybe work on some weak spots.
And you both mentioned that racing Xterra is financially demanding as well as time consuming. What do you guys do to actually being able to afford it? I guess you're not professional triathletes, you do some other stuff in your life. So what is it you do?
So I signed up on Feedfinder to finance my season. No, I'm kidding. Um, I studied graphic design, and I'm running my own company for 15 years now. I also started to study architecture for a couple of years at the Technical University in Vienna. So a lot of my work is with like design and graphic and all that kind of stuff. And because I'm running my own design agency, for me it's possible to work from anywhere. Just take my computer, and with my customers I can just set out good timings. And when I'm in Australia, to acclimatize and like get used to the time zone, next year in March I'll be probably also working some hours graphic design to finance racing.
What about you, Bart?
I run my own company as well. I've been doing so for a few years now, and I coach athletes and I help them perform to the max, to what's possible for them, and whether it's one race they want to peak towards, or a full season of high level racing, and that's what I help them with basically.
But Bart, how do you feel like? Because on one hand, it's easy to say, okay, if I was able to completely focus on training 100%, maybe I would be a better athlete. How do you feel like that translates to you? Do you feel like having this focus outside of only being purely performance oriented and maybe being able to only give that 90%, maybe that's more beneficial for you? How do you think about that?
I have thought about it, but in the grand scheme of things, I think having something other than your own training and your own process to be busy with constantly, for me at least, is a good thing. And on the other hand, the whole reason I started coaching is throughout my education, I had several internships, started working with athletes that way, and I really discovered the how fulfilled I get from helping others. And it's really nice to be able to work with people that are motivated by themselves. And it's not that they need me to get out of the door and move. It's just that they need someone that helps them do the right stuff and prevent them from doing stupid stuff sometimes, um, to put it really black and white. But in general, it's really nice to be able to work with people like that, and it's really fulfilling at some point knowing what someone has done and them seeing them reach the finish line, or reach a certain goal, and that you're a small part of that whole process is really cool. And that's why I do what I do, and I can do it in such a way that I can combine it, and I'm quite flexible. And so I think it only adds to my myself as a person, and therefore also as an athlete in the end.
And Dominic, do you feel the same way about your business, or do you feel like maybe it's taking a bit too much of your attention away from sport?
For me, it's definitely a good balance. Not working too much, and I think with only training every day, I would get too bored. And a lot of my ideas, for example, if I have to do a corporate design and I have to think of a new logo, most of those ideas come when I'm doing my long runs, when I'm sitting for hours on my mountain bike, on my road bike. And also, nothing that design is something that human thought of. It's all a copy of nature. So being out there every day training and looking at waves, looking at trees, forests, shapes, gives a lot back to me and my work.
If you listen to our previous episodes, you know that we have a questions that we always give to our guests. But this time there is a twist. So we want to ask you, What would make you better, or why aren't you better is the correct question. But instead of answering for yourself, we want you to answer for each other.
Ooh.
So, Bart, why is Dominik not better at Xterra racing?
Based on what I've seen,
Careful now, maybe you might not be friends after this episode anymore.
oh no.
The good thing he is first, so whatever comes to your mind.
Well, based on what I've seen and how I see him doing in races, then obviously some low-hanging fruit could be the swim, because I do think he has a certain level, both cycling and running. And in his case, being up further in the field after the swim already would also strongly, or could potentially strongly, influence his finishing position, because at some point it clumps together in groups, especially on the bike. If he's further up after the swim, being able to ride with more people or a different group, and also then extend that progression through the field with his run, that's already going quite well, would have, I think, quite a positive outcome on the result. And so focusing some attention to the swim would be a move I would make.
Dominik, what do you think would make Bart better?
As he already said, his swim is already on point, so we can't say anything about that. Just take the momentum out of your swim into the bike and a run, and you'll be next world champion. And the second thing is just move to Austria, Brew, and we can train together, work on our low-hanging fruits and other lactate parties. And no, I think for your racing, maybe one thing that could help you is not getting mentally frustrated when you get overtaken on the bike, instead of taking it as a motivation to keep pushing harder and like hanging onto the back wheel of someone coming from behind. I do know how strong you are from our training sessions together, especially brick runs also, where I start out of the changing area and then smash out the run, and then eventually you'd catch up and like keep the momentum. So I think that could be very strong for you.
I understand it's frustrating when people start catching you up from behind.
Especially on the run.
Yep.
Yeah, the thing is, by that point, normally the field is that far spread apart that you don't have a lot of movement anymore. But during the bike, definitely. And I think that's something that happened to me, especially in Molveno. But that's something, a race that if I can have point out one off day this season, it unfortunately was the World Championship, the main race over there.
I think it was not yourself on that day, because I've seen you racing in Czech Republic on the long distance and on the short track in Molveno, and 2 days later you were gone. I don't know where you went, but you were not in your body.
No, true. That's the conclusion I also drew, because obviously I was really disappointed after that race. It was a really long race. I had a lot of time to talk, to think about things during, because I was out there for so long. But looking back at it, I can definitely say it was an off day. Also looking back at all the data and the decisions I made during the race, before the race, how we took care of ourselves after the short track. And obviously that went well. So the form was there, because otherwise it wouldn't have happened during the short track as well. So
Are you your own coach?
No, I do have a coach, but I did see my relationship, so to speak, with my coach evolve over the years. Like in the beginning, it was the same as I have with some athletes now that I coach. But I think over the years, for me at least, it became more of a mentorship, because for me it's really important to still have that outside perspective, because it doesn't matter how much experience and knowledge you have, you can't have an outside perspective on yourself, and that's why I have someone that helps me with that.
Well, good news is you have another chance on Molveno. The World Championship is coming back again to Molveno. Are you guys excited to race Molveno again?
I think the course actually suits me, and it was my best ever World Championship result this year. So looking forward to a good Molveno 2025.
Dominic, Bart just talked about his Molveno experience. When you look back on it, do you have anything similar to that in terms of a high or low moment?
I have a very, very similar low moment just 2 days before on the short track, where I struggled from the beginning. Eventually, I could like stay strong mentally and like get it out of my head and not stress too much about it 2 days later. And I took that frustration and changed it into strength or motivation for myself, and I think that gave me the result that I'm looking back at now from the World Championship, and I take this as a big I don't know, big motivation for next year. I know what I'm capable of, and I think I can build on that.
And any highs, maybe something that's not reflected, in a result, but like, let's say let's say in Taiwan, you ran really well, or is there anything that comes to mind?
As you mentioned, my run, I knew I got a penalty on the run because I saw it after the first lap, and I decided not to take it because then maybe some opponents will catch up on me and then stick with me. So in my head, I always had the idea of running out 30 extra seconds from the people behind me to be safe when I come to the penalty tent. And that worked out really great, and also gave me some extra strength to catch up with a few more people on the run. And it was definitely high for me.
Mm-hmm. And Bart, what about you? What high moments stand out for you this year? Is it the validation from the Czech races, or something different?
For me, it would be hearing the national anthem played for the first time. Also, partially for me while I was standing on the podium. That was, a really unique moment that I can still remember the feeling. And I look back on that day really fondly. It was obviously at the national championships we had at home, about 2 weeks after the Czech-Germany combination. Funny side story. I went there to do a course recon because I figured I should do my homework, as it's still an important race. And after that, I was so bummed because I just came back from being abroad for weeks on end in amazing mountains and trails, and then I started pre-riding the course, and it was typical all flat, twisty roads up and down, and even a connection over asphalt over the main road towards the cycling part. And I wasn't looking forward to the race itself, but I just shifted my mind into like, okay, you signed up, so now you're gonna follow through with what you need to do to be able to perform well. And that's what I did, and it all came together at the end of that race, and I was able to run myself onto the podium. And that's a memory I'm really proud of.
A third place there was really impressive, I must say. That was really nice to see.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, in the Netherlands, they actually rank the overall, or the elite, as you could say. They rank them, but you also are ranked in your own age category. And it turned out that I won in my category as well. So it was a double success on that day.
Congrats. Aneta, you're muted.
Yeah, I had to mute myself because my daughter is running just outside of the door and she's screaming really loud. But I wanted to ask if Dominik is planning any exotic trips next year, because this year he has been racing in Costa Rica, right? So any extra races that are not included in the World Cup?
Yeah, I'll be going to the exotic New Zealand. It's a week after the first World Cup in Australia. And then I'll be racing in my home country, in the exotic Austria, which is in July. It's also not part of the World Cup, but it will be First edition Xterra Austria Altaussee. We used to have a Xterra circuit in Austria with 3 to 4 races 10 years ago, and it was too hard to organize for most of the organizers, so it kind of completely died in Austria, and now it seems like the scene is coming back to my country, and that's something very special.
It is very special to race in your home country, especially in your hometown, I can say.
Yeah.
Should we go to the last 5 questions?
Okay, now I'm unmuted as well. I think we can do quick fire. Although let me just ask a quick question of both of you guys. Put in a little extra question. What are your guys' long-term goals with triathlon? What's the vision? What would you guys like to accomplish in the next coming years? And let's start. It could be anything. It could be like, I want to run a 2:45 kilometer or something, or it could be, I want to be 10th at the World Championships or something. And let's start with Bart.
Oh, in the grand scheme of things, maybe a bit too vague, but I like to improve myself year on year, season after season. Obviously, that's something that will stop eventually, but I do have a few good years in front of me, or at least I hope so. In terms of like arbitrary goals, I don't know. I reached one actually during the session Dominik was referring to earlier this year in Austria. I had a long time goal of breaking 400 watts for 20 minutes, and that's something that worked out really well on that day. Even with margin, I was high enough so nobody can take that away, and it wasn't on my mountain bike, so that's also something. I don't have goals like that like I have to reach a certain number. I do, in a few years' time, want to go back to swimming a bit more again. I've never been able to break the 2-minute barrier for 200 meters. That's something I want to go back to and make a project out of.
That's
I missed it
ridiculous.
by a few tenths of a second a few years ago. Running, I don't focus on separate races, but I would like to try a half marathon on the road at some point, going sub 16 on the 5. And I would love to explore some more trail running in some years. Probably not next year, but it's something that definitely interests me more and more. And I think it's a great way of being out in nature. And I would love to do something in that regard. But my ultimate goal, I don't know, keep improving.
Perfect. That sounds good. Dominik, how about you?
I've always had a goal to win one of the Xterra World Series races. I've won one Xterra in Canada in 2019, I think, in Canmore, but it was not part of the World Tour. So that's still open. I have a couple of second and third places in the World Tour. Another goal would be finishing the season in the top 10 of the World Cup and top 10 of the World Championship, where I got pretty close this year. In regards of running or cycling races, I'm not too sure. I would love to run a marathon under 2:30 at one point, and a very long-term goal was always racing in Kona, the Ironman World Championship once, but as the years pass by, it's also fading a bit, because I think the sport is getting so competitive that it's not a simple task, even if you race on a level like us, to even qualify for Kona. And my biggest goals for sport is always exploring the world and get to know and see new places, and that's why I've been sticking around with Xterra for so many years.
That also sounds fantastic. I think, Aneta, we can move on to our quickfire questions. I can do the first one. We kind of already had this answered, but let's start with Dominik for this one. Move on to Bart. If you could take one of a racer's skill slash strength, what would it be? For example, if you could run like Artur or swim like Bart or like Michele or something, what would it be?
I'd probably take the swim from the good years from Roger Serrano, because I think it would set me up on a good race, and I know I can improve my run and my riding level quite easy. But the swim, I'm kind of stuck.
Bart?
Get the run legs from one of the Frenchies.
Which one?
I think Serrière, because he has a tendency to be able to make up a lot of deficit if he's behind after the bike. The amount of time he can pull back on the run, that's really respectable.
Impressive, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, second question. And again, starting with Bart this time. If you had to spend the rest of your life training in one location, what would it be? And why would it be Austria?
Because it's awesome in summer, awesome in winter. I love the kitchen, the culture over there. Any more reasons?
And Dominik exists over
Exactly.
there as well. Dominik, what about you?
Yeah, this is my spot. No words needed.
Okay. And lastly, Dominik, we'll start with you again. What is your favorite Xterra memory / experience?
My favorite Xterra memory would be the Xterra South Africa in 2017, where my good friend Aidan Nugent, who was still racing at that time, was in the summer before, was in Austria training with me, and he got so used to my Garmin, which every 20 minutes told me to drink. It made this beep sound and told me to drink. And then the next year in February, we both raced in South Africa, Xterra Group O, and I caught him on the bike, and he wasn't looking back who was riding behind me. And at some point, my Garmin made the sound, and Aidan shouted from the front to me, "Drink time, Tommy!" This was probably the funniest moment in a race, and there was also another guy behind me, and everyone was laughing, and he was just like, "What the fuck are you doing, guys?"
Fun fact, Aiden was staying at my place one summer as well, because he was racing junior European Cup in Tabor in Czech Republic. So we have some friends in common.
Yeah.
Bart?
I think at some point, I think it was Germany, I was in the race, and Scott overtook me in the beginning, and we tend to shout at each other. This time it was really polite. I think some David Goggins quote about carrying a boat, and it was a really funny dynamic because we overtook each other several times during that race on the bike. Yeah, so it's not one highlight moment. There's a lot of funny stuff that happens, but mostly that's also outside around the race. Yeah, but during the race, that's definitely a good moment. I remember.
All right. Aneta, do you have anything more to add?
No, but I'm missing a controversy in this podcast. You guys were way too polite for yourself.
Now we can continue into the second part of this episode where we say all the
second part, which we're going to inevitably delete.
Yeah, I'll put on my shirt for that and start talking shit.
That's what this podcast is about. You should have brought it up.
Yeah, but we
start a rumor.
Let's not get cancelled after the first podcast appearance ever.
Okay, I have a question. What do you guys think about French lines?
It's a real thing.
Well, we all know that is a real thing.
Yeah, I also don't know why it should be a problem. Like, not saying that it should be allowed, but if it's something we don't want to happen, why can't we fix it?
How do we fix it?
I think when you look at the map, or at least recon the course, there are definitely points that everybody that thinks about a line choice will point out, hey, you can save some time here and there. And it's a gray area, because sometimes, like, what's taking a fast line and what's what's starting to be cutting the course and taking a line that shouldn't be allowed. But it's not a mystery where that would happen on certain courses. And I think if they don't want certain people taking certain lines, they can find a solution.
I think we should set up an education class of how to recognize trails. Nothing else needed.
What I do is during the bike familiarization, if I think there is a place which is where you can take a French line, and it's not really fair or it's not very clear where the trail is, which I think in Morveno, for example, there were places where there were two trails, one was faster than other, and it wasn't really clear which one is the official one, right? So what I do is I take picture and I send them to Nico Lebrun. And then they either close it or not.
The thing is, if you take 10 French people riding the same course, then there will eventually turn out to be a trail.
Well, some parts were more significant towards the end of the week in Morveno than others.
Yeah, that's definitely true. But I think that's also a result because of a lot of people did their recon there properly. And there were definitely quite a lot of places where there were multiple lines. And I don't know, in certain areas, maybe they should just mark off the outer boundaries and say, whatever is between the tape, do whatever you want. You need to go from here to there and find what you think is your best line and mark it off that way. Then everybody's free to take a line that suits their style and skill. And we don't have any issues, but it should be clear beforehand because that's the whole issue. It can't be that there are lines coming up during a race that not everybody is aware of, because that's the problem, I think.
One more question. Is there going to be Oberwappler team on the Xterra circuit next year?
There will be the Oberwappler community, and it's like a travel group having coffee together, pre-riding together, making funny videos together, and making a couple of YouTube videos and talking shit together.
Well, we are looking forward to it.
Me
You
too.
can definitely expect that from us.
Well, thank you guys for coming today on the podcast. It was a pleasure. And I will be looking forward to see Dominik in Australia and Bart in Greece.
Yes, most certainly.
Well, good luck with your winter prep and stay healthy because I'm not.
And Happy New
You
Year.
too.
Happy New Year, you guys.
Yeah, all the best
Happy New
wishes
Year.
for the new year.
Yeah.
Yep.
Happy
good
New
one.
Year. No pressure to put this podcast out before New Year's.
No pressure.
This will be the New Year's podcast. So
Published
if you're
tomorrow.
listening,
Definitely not.
No?
This is the last podcast of 2024.
then I wish you all the best for the new year, and we'll see each other on the start line.
Beautiful
Adios.
ending.
Ciao.
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 Bye, guys.